Hey, so update. It's been a while. We left September 17th? I don't remember. I think 17th. We went to Tokyo. Family came from China, three of them. So we had six of us in Tokyo in an apartment for a week. Then we flew up to, after Tokyo, we flew up to China. I went to all over. Went to Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Xiamen, Hangzhou, Foshan. Yeah, probably missing something, but it was awesome. China's wonderful. Um, Sorry, Bing. Oh, uh, but yeah, it was incredible. And then China was super fun. Came back, and then what was it? They went back to Minnesota. My wife and Leo, Suyao and Leo, and then yeah, I was there in Japan for 2 weeks by myself. But not only Japan, I decided kind of like one day randomly to basically hop on a flight and go somewhere. So my choices were Vietnam, Thailand, maybe somewhere else in Japan. There was a couple other places that I was originally planning to go to Toyama or Tateyama, maybe kind of like mid-north, mid-central Honshu. But I didn't go there. I decided to just leave. It was a decision about, like the hassle of going through customs again versus not going through customs, because you burn some time with the flight, you burn some time through customs at each country, going in and out. Anyways, I decided to go, and I went to Taiwan for 5 days, I think it was. And Taiwan was super fun. But yeah, it's I have so much to say about it. I don't know if I can really fit it all in a single video. But yeah, let's see. I'll just kind of do it by section. The first week we were all together was really awesome. We had her aunt, her mom, and her dad, and me, her, and Leo all together in an apartment. It was super fun. We got the apartment on Airbnb. Did an apartment because it was cheaper than doing a hotel. A hotel would have been 2 rooms for, what was that, 7 days? So quite a bit more than the apartment was on Airbnb. Plus, I think given it's a longer amount of time, this particular apartment did a discount. The apartment was in Akihabara, about a little bit south of the Akihabara station. There's like a river that kind of breaks up the land there just south of the station, so we were on the other side of that river. So a little bit quieter than the main area, but like there's a pedestrian bridge that it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it goes up, and not middle of nowhere, but anyways, the pedestrian bridge, it kind of goes over that little river really easily, so you can get like straight into the main craziness of it. It's awesome. Airbnb and like rental procedures are interesting in Japan. You have to like submit different information like passport, name, contact info, blah blah blah, to either, I think, to the person you're renting from. So I found some places I rented, you had to do it in advance. They wanted it in advance. Others, they left a little sheet like on the table when you get to the Airbnb. And that's very similar to China, where the hotels will like register and check you in via your passport, basically, and like they check you in with the government, the same as Japan does. But it's really interesting. The U.S. is the only one that doesn't. Like, it's funny. I don't know if the EU does. Maybe it's been a long time since I was there. But at least Japan and China, they check you in basically with the government when you rent a hotel or stay somewhere. And that's just like, I guess, just compliance, like they have to. So no big deal. People get all like butthurt about tracking, but meanwhile they're using crazy, like their phones for everything and like being tracked constantly. So whatever. Yeah. So week in Japan was cool. We did let's see. We did Mount Fuji. We went to Ginza. Did we go? I don't think we went to Shibuya. We stayed kind of like on east side, I think, and then Fuji, and then kind of like ran around the area around Mount Fuji. I think that's Yamanashi. But yeah, it was really fun, and it was kind of cool to, at least for me, to see like her experience, her feelings towards it all, towards Japan, towards the city, towards the culture, etc. And then her mom and her dad and her aunt, and see how they enjoy it. I think they had fun, but I know it's like, it's just kind of like happy to be home when you do get home. So they're probably happy to be in China when they got back, because China's pretty easy too. China is interesting. Where you go in China is different. So similar to you, it's hard to speak to what Japan is. You can't really speak to what China is. There's a lot of nonsense on the internet about like what China is. It's so much more than just the government. I mean, the government has a strong direct impact in daily life in a lot of ways, but it's like, it's more subtle ways. Some you notice, some you don't. Like there's cameras all over. There's requirements for different things that kind of other places maybe don't have. But it's not like a huge burden, I would say. I would say the biggest hassle about China is when you go to a train station, you go to the subway, you have to go, there's like a security with a bag scanner thing right there. You have to go through that to get to go to the train, basically. So you like go in, you go through the bag scanner, and then you go. And then you go to the next station, or maybe you transfer. You have to go through another bag scanner at that station. So it's a bit annoying because it's a bit redundant. You do like scan here, scan here, scan here. There's like all this oversight, and there's a lot of things that are interesting. But it's not a huge hassle. It's just some things that are annoying. But the overall whole, like the food, the people, the ease of use, especially for myself using US dollar to pay for everything. Coming from US dollar to convert to pay for everything there, the exchange rate was really favorable. So that made it really great. I mean, just like, I think the general rule is anything that's kind of foreign made product, like Western made product, like Adidas, Nike, all this stuff, they basically just like convert it to their equivalent currency, but you usually pay about the same that you would here, so it's not a big savings. But yeah, man, there's a lot to talk about though. It's a great trip, and it's just so much. Let's see. There's the kind of the nice thing that with I mean, like Japan, Tokyo's Tokyo. For people who don't know about it, I guess the best way to describe it is it's like, it's busy, it's intense. There's a lot going on. There's tons of visual and aesthetic stimulation, like the buildings, the signs, the lights, and it's usually centered around the evening. And so there's a lot, but at the same time, it's very like organized, quiet, typically, kind of rigid structure more. And people are going to and from work. If you look, a lot of places, I mean, Harajuku, Shibuya, there's like artsy areas where you have people who are more creative in their clothing, etc. So like you'll see more bright colors, but typically on the trains and a lot of places you'll see black, you'll see the suits, you'll see the salarymen, and that's just, I mean, part of Tokyo. Like it's the financial core of the country, but then Osaka is a bit different. But that's why I say it. And then I lived in Aomori area, like Aomori Prefecture, a long time ago, Misawa, and then like Hachinohe up there is different. Sendai, Morioka, these are all places that, like up in the north, that were much different than Tokyo. And then I got to go to Osaka this trip. So the 2 weeks after our time in China, when they went back to Minnesota, I had to myself. And so part of that time, got a place in Osaka, and I basically went around the Kansai region for the most part. I went to Nara, I went to Okayama, Wakayama, and like, what was that? Not Senkai? I forget the name of it. It's another place like right before, I think it's right before Wakayama going south of Osaka. Went down there, and yeah, it was, I really like the Kansai region. The people are like more warm, friendly than Tokyo. Tokyo is very kind of like cold compared to Kansai. I feel like up north is more friendly too. I think Tokyo itself is just kind of like New York, where you go to parts of New York and people are just New York City, and people are just like cold and kind of keep themselves at a distance, don't really talk to like a tourist or whatever, or somebody just visiting. Whereas you can go to like Harlem, and Harlem's like so much fun. It's like kind of wild, crazy, but it's fun. But yeah, like Osaka, and I'll try to go to Fukuoka and some other places. I was gonna go to Ishigaki. Ishigaki's like the southern westernmost island off the coast of Taiwan a little bit, but it's like one of the last islands in the chain, I think, southwest of mainland Japan on Honshu. Didn't go there this time. I was considering it, but instead I went to Taiwan. But yeah, like there's so much variation just within Japan itself, and you really can't get that unless you go at least 2 or 3 times, and you have to travel around a bit, and you have to kind of like read up a little bit to understand it. But yeah, China was the same way. Like Foshan, where her parents lived, and then Guangzhou and Shenzhen, and then Hangzhou and Shanghai, and like all these places, they're all like so different. Shanghai is very metropolitan, similar to New York City. Foshan was like, hard to describe what Foshan is. Foshan is like you have the like the startings of a big metropolitan area. I mean, it's like it's an offshoot of Guangzhou. Basically, it's a what do you call that? A suburb of Guangzhou, essentially. It's like an hour and a half away, I think. But it's very. There's a lot of like, they have a train. They have this massive like downtown area. They have these night markets. They have all kinds of cool stuff. But at the same time, they're like culturally, there's a ton of smoking. That's my pet peeve for China, is the smoking. Primarily in Guangdong, primarily around the Foshan area. They like smoke everywhere in just about every restaurant, regardless of who's around. There are gonna be like a bunch of kids in a restaurant, and it's typically older men that are smoking. I rarely saw women smoke. In the public restrooms, in the restrooms in a restaurant, always like a cloud of smoke in there. I was always kind of nervous going in. But yeah, there's some things about like Guangdong in particular, health and safety, like I feel like environmentally, especially the more rural like area like Foshan. Foshan's not actually rural if you compare it to like the woods here in the U.S., like a backwoods town. But I would say culturally it's kind of rural in some ways. But people are super nice, and people are pretty friendly. And it feels like the Wild West, especially having that immediate comparison between Japan culture in like Foshan Guangdong culture. Excuse me. It just seems like there's no rules, but it's really nice. I think once you acclimate to it a little bit and kind of understand the dynamics, then it's really, really great. But it takes you need a little bit of time, especially in those types of places in China. Let's see. But yeah, we went all around. China's like really, really convenient for the most part. I mean, like it's just easy to. I say it's convenient. I would say overall slightly less convenient than Japan due to kind of regulations, rules, that type of thing. But more so in certain places because of the place and kind of like the localized culture and how they do things. It can be like it's less structured, less ordered, more kind of like on the fly. There's a set of rules, but you kind of, it seems like there's a lot of situations where you just got to finesse your way through it, and you got to really know that localized culture. But yeah, and then so lots of good food all over China. I love the night market thing outside her parents' house in Foshan. That was so fun by the river. Got a couple different sickness and this and that, like while we were there. Many times don't know what it was, but it, kind of went away. So let's see. What else? We went to Hangzhou and Shanghai. Shanghai is basically like New York for the most part. It feels like, I mean, we, like take all this with a grain of salt because my time there was pretty limited. I essentially went as a tourist for each place for 2 or 3 days for the first time. So most of it was first time. Xiamen I've been before. Guangzhou been before. So. But Shanghai felt a lot like New York City with all the tourists and kind of like how it's set up for tourism more than other cities. Hangzhou was very like, there's some tourists, but not as many. It's right by Shanghai. That's why we went there. Xiamen is really nice. It's a cool tropical place. But we went out on the beach at nighttime, trying to just kind of like enjoy it and hear the ocean. People just like set up improv karaoke businesses on the sand with these loudspeakers, and it's that's what I mean by it's kind of like the Wild West. I mean, like there's a certain time that they're allowed to be noisy, and then the police will come and kick them out. But during that time, like a public beach, see the ocean is beautiful. People just like one person here is setting up a loud karaoke machine with blasting speakers. Then another one over here, and they're like battling each other, and it's just noisy depending on where you're standing, or it could be like directly pointed at you. And so that's like the Wild West thing that's kind of annoying sometimes. But it's a mild thing. It's not a big deal. I think people who are used to like St. Paul or even quieter towns where like not a lot of stuff really happens and it's not ever really noisy, have a hard time there. It just takes some acclimation and adjustment to understand the context and the culture. Again, I'm no expert. This is my limited experience and thoughts. So, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, way better on smoking and that type of thing. But I would say my overall like feeling from China is that China is, although they have tourism and they try to welcome tourism, I feel like China is made for Chinese, which is not a bad thing, that's how they want to do, that's how they want to do. Great. It's their country. So keep that in mind because like that's the framework you need to work with when you're thinking about China versus thinking about Japan, because Japan's very like tourism friendly. Like especially around the Tokyo and like your major cities, they like do so much to try to make it easy for foreigners, specifically with English, to kind of like get around. To have, there's so many signs, there's so many things accessibility wise, despite such a large number of Japanese people not being able to speak English well. There's just so much they can do, and they do a ton to try to like draw in people, and you could tell that on this trip too. Like the sheer amount of tourists was huge in Japan. It was wild. When we flew to China from Japan with everybody on JAL, flying into Guangzhou, nobody in economy. No, like it felt like 6 or 7 people in the entire economy section. Now JAL has big seats compared to Delta and all these other places. so it was really nice. But on top of that, we basically had any seat we wanted, any row we wanted in economy. So we could just like lay out. It was weird. Get into China, not a huge line. Didn't look like there was a lot of travel in and out of China, to be honest. But when I was leaving China, yeah, when we left, I think the flight was full when we left back to Tokyo. And then later when I went to Taiwan, flight was full, but everything kind of went quick. There was a lot of Chinese or Taiwanese on the flight going to Taiwan. I don't know if they're from mainland or from Taiwan, but they were going to Taiwan. And so when I got to Taiwan, customs was super easy for like foreigners. There was almost no line. I think there was one or two people in front of me, and I just kind of walked straight in. And getting to like from where the gate, the airplane parks, coming out of the gate, going straight through customs and then going in, it was super fast. Probably the fastest I've ever seen for any country. Tokyo is crazy because it's just so many tourists, so it's never really fast. But yeah, so come back from China. Let me split this up into. So came back from China, went to Japan. We kind of like did last minute stuff, and then they took off to come back to Minnesota. And then I took a bullet train down to Osaka, explored Dotonbori. I'm gonna pronounce that wrong probably, but like the main area of Osaka. Let's see, and then let me do a map real quick. And then I went to Okayama first. So I went to, sorry. Let's see. Takamatsu. So it's on the island of Shikoku, which is kind of like west-ish of Osaka. And so I had to take a bullet train over to Okayama and then take the local train down to Takamatsu. So I at least got to hit up Shikoku, which was cool. That's a list of to-do list thing of mine. I wanted to explore more, but I kind of didn't plan my trip very well. I have a better idea now if I were to do it again, but probably next time I'll go to different places. There's so I did Okayama, Takamatsu, that's a beautiful area. Like I would love to actually have a place around there, even though it's about 40. I think it was like 40 minutes by bullet train to Osaka, which is not bad actually. Osaka, then went to Nara, went to the deer park where they like bow and do all that stuff. It was fun, but I also went hiking in Nara, like a bit east of the deer park. There's like a kind of forested area that's really beautiful there, and you can go up on one of the mountains or something there. I don't remember sorry, I'm blanking on the name. But yeah, basically if you go to the deer park, walk outside the station, and you just keep going straight through the deer park, and you keep going until kind of like the road ends, and then it turns into like a walking path into the forest, and it just keeps going. It's really cool. Definitely recommend that. But be prepared. It's not a huge hike, but it kind of, I think it just surprised me. It looked easier than it was, but it wasn't bad overall. So, also, Kansai Airport is beautiful. Pretty easy to get in and out. I actually enjoy flying through there, probably more than Haneda. Wakayama, which is just south of the Kansai Airport. It's a really cool, like, tiny town right off the kind of like southwest coast near Osaka. I went to Wakayama City, not only Wakayama Prefecture. I wanted to go further down into the prefecture, but just short on time, and really everything's being done on the fly on this trip. Like most of the time I wake up and I just figure out what I'm going to do that day, and that was it. So no, I mean, like very limited planning. I won't say no planning, but limited. Wakayama is like small town, and it's small town in Japan is kind of interesting. It still feels big, but you know it's a small town when you start to get rid of like when it becomes predominantly buses instead of trains, and you see a lot more cars, and you start to see things like, so there's this chain in Japan called Book Off, and Book Off in the like your core cities typically has like a small footprint, so you get a Book Off, not a super Book Off, or Hard Off. Hard Off is like a thrift store, like a Goodwill, I guess, and then there's Home Off, which is like Home Depot but secondhand. So there's Super Book Off, which is like a bigger footprint, like it's kind of like Walmart versus Super Walmart. And then there's Hard Off, and then Super Hard Off, not Super Hard Off. There's like Hard Off, and then they'll combine with Home Off. But I never really saw Home Off, particularly in the more urban areas. Only when I got out to the suburban Wakayama and all that. So that's the other kind of signifier, that buses, many more cars, stuff much more spread out, a lot more walking, and it's like big open stroads, not even like the tiny streets going through Tokyo or Osaka or something like that. So yeah, it was a bit different. It reminded me a lot of Misawa and like Hachinohe specifically, actually, probably closer to Hachinohe in northern Japan. Okayama was pretty cool. It's kind of like I'd say a similar city to Wakayama, but it had a little more density to it. Takamatsu is a small coastal town. There's like a dense central area, but that you can, I rode a bike and it felt like I got out of that central area pretty quickly. So yeah, definitely super fun. Okay, now about Taiwan. Taiwan was cool. Okay, Taiwan is from an experience standpoint, at least mine. Sorry, bumped it. Taiwan is a perfect blend of Japan and China. It's got the Japanese structure to a lot of things. Like for example, in Guangdong, when we were there, scooters everywhere. They're like the delivery guys. There's so many delivery people, and they can deliver everything to your plate anywhere really fast. It's crazy. That's a whole other topic, is the delivery guys in China. But they're all over the place, and I felt like I was constantly looking over my shoulder trying not to get hit by one of them on any sidewalk or anywhere. Whereas Japan, never, of course. But then Taipei, clarity, I went to Taipei. I did not go anywhere else in Taiwan. But at least this is my experience at Taipei. In Taipei, there's tons of scooters everywhere, but they're very organized. Like where they park is in certain areas along the road, and they're really good to stay in those areas. They don't run on the sidewalks, and if they do occasionally, they're very like cognizant and courteous of the pedestrians walking. So it's very like Japanese in that way. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, my camera actually overheats if you do too long. It might do it again. So I'll keep it short. I think I was talking about Taiwan. Taiwan is amazing, specifically Taipei. The rest of it looks cool too, but my experience in Taipei was great. Love the night markets. Like there's so many different night markets all across the city, in each of the like district and neighborhood area. It's awesome, and they're every single night, so there's always something to do. It's really great. I guess maybe if you live there a long time, it's not as big of a deal, but especially as a tourist, it really packs the schedule. And there's kind of each night market is different, but tons of food is really awesome. I like in Taiwan how The people are really nice. It's like that nice mix between Japan and China where it's the warm friendliness of the Chinese with like a lot of the order and systems of Japanese. Particularly, I was in, was it Zhongzhen district? Maybe I pronounced that wrong. It's near the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall. I was a bit north of there, but one thing I like a lot is how accessible nature is. Yeah, I mean, it's an island. It's relatively small compared to other countries. However, like it's the nature aspect of it is so accessible. I think I rode 20, 30 minutes to one of like the southern, where is it? I rode down to Bitan. So where is it? What is that? Xinjiang Station. But it's near Bitan, and so it's this kind of like it's near where the if you look on a map, a big chunk of forested area just south of Taipei starts. It's I think considered part of New Taipei City, just north of Yilan County. But it's a really great place. Like, it's a tropical climate, I think, or subtropical. I'm not sure the distinction, but it's really, really comfortable, really easy to get around. There's a lot of old and new. The area called New Taipei, the buildings are like newer, more modern. The feeling is more like Tokyo, whereas the part I was in was like a lot more older, kind of worn infrastructure. But I was thinking when I was there that there's like black marks on a lot of the concrete, and there's a lot of just like wear from the environment because it's humid, it's hot. They have like really intense rainy seasons. So a lot of this stuff like over time shows on the infrastructure, on the buildings, and it's once you understand that, it makes sense. I think my first impression, like when I went to Ishigaki, because Ishigaki is like right next to Taiwan. I went to Ishigaki last year. Ishigaki kind of gave me this feeling like it's all worn down and it's old and like a little bit decrepit, like lower quality Japan than. But if you like reading and learning a little bit more about it, like you have to build concrete in that part of the world because you can't really build wood. Wood doesn't last very long there because of the salt water around it, the humidity, the rainy seasons. But then you build concrete and things, it just kind of wears a different way, so it looks worn over time. Metal things rust a lot easier. There's just things there that are kind of like just part of the ecosystem. But once you understand it, there's a lot of beauty in it, though. I love there's areas through the part of Taipei that I stayed in that were just like the buildings were really worn kind of looking, and like the green, the trees and like plants and everything was really overgrown. It was awesome.